Dear listeners, before we get started, drop a quick hi in the comments and let us know where you're tuning in from. Also, if you have any suggestions for us to make the channel better, please let us know. Now let's start with the story. At 46, I guess some would call me a self-made man. Truth is, I never had much of a choice. I grew up in South Atlanta, real South Atlanta. Not the gentrified parts you see in magazines now, but the streets where you learn to keep your head down and your fists ready. A lot of the guys I grew up with, they didn't make it out. Some caught cases before they were old enough to shave. Others just got swallowed up by the same cycle that took their dads and their older brothers. Me? I started hustling early, but the legal kind. Lawn mowing, grocery runs, cleaning up at the barber shop. Anything that paid cash and kept me off the radar. I remember once, I was about 15, this guy in the neighborhood asked me why I was always working. I told him, because no one's ever going to give me anything. I've got to take it without stealing it. I joined the Army at 18. 6 years. I specialized in security protocols. It wasn't glamorous, but it taught me discipline. More importantly, it taught me how to read people. Not just watch their hands or where their eyes go, but feel them. A shift in posture. A hesitation in their voice. Most folks don't notice those things, but I made it my job. When I got out, I came home with a plan. I didn't want to be a cop. I didn't want to sit behind a desk. I wanted to build something that mattered. So I started Campbell Security Solutions in my garage. Just me, a burner phone, a Glock, and a notebook full of names. Security isn't about guns and guards, I tell my team. It's about understanding people. It's about seeing the threat before it becomes one. That's the rule I built the business on. Over time, word spread. First it was small gigs, weddings, private parties, storefronts after hours. Then came the bigger fish, councilmen, entertainers, CEOs. I didn't advertise. I didn't need to. When someone important in Atlanta needed protection, they knew where to find me. We grew, 50 employees now, mostly vets like me. Guys who came home with skills, but no direction. I gave them both. You don't work for me, I tell them. You work with me. And I'll never forget that. I make sure they're paid right, better than industry. I check on their families when someone gets sick or a kid starts acting out. Loyalty's a two-way street. And my clients? They're not just names on a contract. They're people I've sat with, eaten with, protected. I've been to their homes, met their kids. They don't just see me as a service provider. They see me as a friend. Liam Washington, my best friend and VP, likes to say it best. We were grabbing coffee once, going over a few new contracts. He leaned back, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "You're the kind of man who wouldn't just take a bullet for someone." He shook his head. "You'd make sure no one ever got close enough to fire that bullet in the first place." At home, I lived in a 5-bedroom house in one of Atlanta's nicer suburbs. Quiet streets, good schools, neighbors who waved but didn't pry. The kind of place you work your ass off for when you come from nothing. It had all the bells and whistles, a swimming pool, a 3-car garage, a kitchen big enough to host 10 people without anyone bumping elbows. On paper, I had made it. People used to say that all the time. "Man, Matthew, you got it all." They'd smile, looking around at the house or watching my wife float across a room in heels that cost more than their mortgage. I'd nod, smile back. What else could I say? Kinsley was beautiful. No one could deny that. She had a presence about her, head always held high, makeup flawless, and an Instagram feed that looked like something out of a luxury magazine. 175,000 followers. Half of them probably thought she was living some fairy tale. Hell, sometimes I let myself believe we were too. She loved to post pictures by the pool, photos from our trips, dinners where the food got cold because she needed the right lighting. Her captions were full of hashtags, #blessed, #couple goals, #true love. I'd scroll past them sometimes and think, is that really how she sees us? Or is that just what she wants everyone else to see? I remember one post clear as day. It was taken 3 weeks before everything went to hell. Kinsley was standing poolside in this designer swimsuit I'd bought her during our last trip to Miami. She captioned it, "When your man gives you everything you want and more. So lucky to have found my forever. #true love." I stared at that post longer than I care to admit. I wasn't sure if she was trying to convince the world or herself. Kinsley was 44, a few years younger than me, and she'd never really had a steady job. She used to talk about her modeling days, flipping through old photos like she was flipping through a script she never got to finish. When that dream faded, she pivoted. Social media became the stage. And I guess I became the sponsor. We met at a nightclub downtown. I was still grinding, 16-hour days, chasing contracts, living off black coffee and ambition. She walked in like she owned the place. All eyes turned. Mine too. There was something magnetic about her. Confident, poised, hungry. She told me once, years later, "You look like someone who knew where he was going." I like that. What she didn't say, but I knew even then, was that she also liked the direction I was headed. Kesha, one of her old high school friends, put it plain, Kinsley always wanted the lifestyle without the work. I didn't want to believe that at first. I thought we were a team, me out there building, her holding things down at home. And in the beginning, it felt like that. She supported me at company events, played the perfect hostess, made sure our home looked like something out of a magazine. We were building a life together, or so I thought. But as the years rolled by, things started to shift. The business grew faster than I ever imagined. More clients, more contracts, more responsibility. That kind of success demands something. Time, energy, presence. And that meant more time away from home. It started small, restlessness. At first, I thought it was just cabin fever. The house was big, beautiful, had everything she'd ever said she wanted. Trips, cars, gifts. But somewhere along the line, it all stopped being enough. Kinsley changed. She used to light up when I walked through the door. Used to ask about my day, my clients, the team. But those days became fewer and farther between. Now it was more about who liked her latest post, what influencer got a free trip to Tulum, or what designer bag was trending this week. I didn't mind spoiling her. I never did. I just thought we were building a life together, not staging one. What I didn't know then was that she'd already found someone who could give her the kind of thrill I couldn't, or wouldn't, offer. Tiago Sanchez. Flashy bastard. Nightclub owner. Always had a new sports car parked outside his place in Midtown and a new girl hanging off his arm. Turns out, 3 years before the shooting, that girl was Kinsley. I didn't know it at the time. Hell, I didn't even suspect it. While I was out protecting other people's lives, she was sneaking off to his penthouse, getting draped in jewelry she couldn't even wear around the house without raising questions. But she played it well. Real well. Those weekends in Miami, girls' trips, that Cartier bracelet, a birthday gift from you, baby. And I bought it. Or maybe I wanted to believe it. Because if I looked too closely, if I let myself really look, I think I would have seen the cracks long before they split wide open. On Instagram, she was still calling me the love of her life. Still posting pictures of our pool, our dinners, our so-called perfect life. Her followers? They had no clue the bag she flaunted was from her lover and not her husband. No idea that the man behind the camera wasn't me. Thing is, as much as she loved the thrill, it still wasn't enough. Tiago never promised her anything serious. No ring, no house, no future. Just champagne and rooftop parties. That was fine for him. Not for her. She wanted more. Freedom. Control. Money that was hers. Not mine. Not his. Hers. That's when things started getting weird. She began asking more questions about the business. Acting like she suddenly cared about margins and cash flow. I didn't think much of it. Until the fight. It started over a credit card charge of $5,000. I saw it on our shared account and brought it up casually one night. Hey, I said, trying to keep it light. What's this $5,000 for? Saks. Oh, that, she said without even blinking. It's for the charity gala next weekend. I needed a few things. $5,000 worth of things. I asked, raising an eyebrow. She snapped before I could even finish the thought. You act like it's all your money, she barked. Like I'm some child who needs an allowance. Kinsley, I said, keeping my voice level. It is our money. But we need to talk about expenses this big. My business isn't a bottomless well. She turned her back and stormed off. No apology. No explanation. That night, after I fell asleep, she did something she'd never done before. She went into my office. She told herself, I know she did, that she was just looking for proof. Something to throw in my face the next time I questioned her spending. It must have happened late one night, while I was asleep. My office door had been left just slightly ajar the next morning. Nothing big, nothing obvious, just enough to make a man who lives by instinct pause. But I brushed it off. Figured maybe I'd forgotten to close it. What I didn't know then was that Kinsley had found the folder. Life insurance. Bold. Plain. Nothing dramatic. Just a folder with documents I'd filed away and forgotten about. 5 years ago, when the business really started taking off, I'd taken out a policy. $5 million. I didn't even think twice. She was my wife. My partner. If anything happened to me, I wanted her to be okay. That's what husbands do. She never mentioned it. Never asked. But I can picture her, sitting there in my chair, the light from the desk lamp casting shadows across the floor, those papers trembling in her hands. And instead of fear, instead of guilt, that idea took root. Freedom. Luxury. No more lies. No more needing anyone. Not me, not Tiago. It wasn't just money. It was power. Control. A way out. Over the next couple months, she started acting different. Not distant, clever. Smarter than before. More calculated. At the time, I didn't see it for what it was. I thought maybe we were reconnecting. She started asking about my travel schedule again, offering to help around the office. asking questions she never used to care about. Then she said it. "I've been thinking," she told me one morning over coffee. "Maybe I should learn how to protect myself." I looked up from my laptop. "You mean self-defense?" "Yeah," she said, sipping slowly, watching me over the rim of her mug. "You're away so much. I should know how to handle things if someone breaks in or something happens." I smiled. I really did. I thought it was sweet. "You finally taking an interest in what I do," I said. "That means a lot." I bought her the gun myself. It was a Sig Sauer P365, compact, easy to handle, perfect for her small hands. She'd been going to the range a few times, said she wanted to learn how to protect herself since I was away so often. I thought it was thoughtful, a step toward bridging whatever distance had grown between us. I remember cleaning it the night I brought it home. She stood in the doorway watching me, head tilted, smiling like she used to. "You really think I can handle that?" she asked. I looked up. "If anyone can, it's you." She laughed, walked over, kissed my cheek. "Guess I better start practicing." I thought it was sweet. I really did. I didn't know I was handing her the weapon she'd later use to shoot me. But the opportunity she was waiting for, that came for me. Cool autumn night. Breeze sharp enough to rustle the tall grass. Stars clear overhead. We hadn't been to the woods behind the house in years. Used to be our spot. Back before all the money, the followers, the business trips, and the secrets. I stood by the back door, watching the moonlight stretch across the lawn. Then I called to her. "Let's go for a walk." She looked up from her phone. "Now?" "Yeah," I said. "To our spot. Just you and me. We need to talk. About where we're headed." She didn't even hesitate. Just nodded, slipped on a jacket, slid the pistol into the pocket when she thought I wasn't looking. She thought this was it. The moment she'd been planning for. But she didn't know I had my own reason for asking her out there. 3 days earlier, I'd received a text. No name, no number, just pictures. Kinsley, my wife, entering Tiago Sanchez's building with that same smug look she wore when she thought she was untouchable. I didn't want to fight in the house. Didn't want to yell in rooms we once shared with love. I wanted to look her in the eye, ask her straight, see what kind of woman I was really sleeping beside. As we walked through the trees, dry leaves crunching beneath our feet, there was silence between us. Not the kind that comes from comfort. The kind that buzzes. Each of us was hiding a secret. I had betrayal in my chest. And she had a 9mm pistol in her pocket. Only one of us would walk back out of those woods. The moon was half hidden behind a veil of drifting clouds as we made our way into the woods, each step muffled by damp earth and scattered leaves. About a quarter mile in, we reached the clearing, the one with the old log by the stream. Years ago, this had been our place. A quiet escape. A place we went to dream together, talk about the future, laugh about nothing. Now it felt like a graveyard. I stopped first, staring out at the stream. The water still moved like it always had. Everything around us unchanged. Except us. "Kinsley," I said, keeping my voice calm. We need to talk about Tiago Sanchez." That name hung there like smoke. Slow, poisonous, undeniable. I didn't miss the twitch in her shoulder or the way her hand dropped slightly toward her pocket. She didn't even flinch. "What about him?" she asked. Her voice was steady. Too steady. I pulled out my phone and unlocked the screen. Swiped once, twice, then held it out to her. Photos. 3 of them. Her, stepping into his building. Her reflection in the glass. Him opening the door. "Don't lie to me anymore," I said, looking her in the eye. "How long has this been going on?" Her gaze flicked from the screen back to me. And for a second, just a second, I saw something behind her eyes. Panic. Calculation. Like a dam breaking inside her head. She didn't answer. I could see it then, playing out in real time, her mind racing. What else does he know? Did he change the insurance policy? Is he planning to leave me? All the groundwork she thought she laid so carefully, unraveling in front of her like loose thread. Then she made her decision. She pulled it out, the same gun I'd bought her for protection, and pointed it at my chest. My heart didn't even have time to speed up. My eyes just widened as my body caught up to what I was seeing. "Kinsley," I said slowly, hands lifted just a little. "What are you doing? Put that down before someone gets hurt." She stared straight through me, voice colder than the wind through the trees. "You're right," she said. "Someone is going to get hurt." The first shot slammed into my chest like a sledgehammer. I didn't even hear it, not at first. Just felt this crushing pressure, like my ribs caved inward. The force threw me backward, and I hit the ground hard, leaves and soil exploding beneath me. My hands went to the wound out of instinct, already soaked in warm, sticky blood. "Kinsley," I gasped. "Why?" But she wasn't hearing me anymore. Her eyes, God, I'll never forget the way she looked at me. Not angry, not even scared, just gone. Like something inside her had finally snapped, and all the years of pretending, of faking smiles, posting lies, calling our life perfect, had all boiled over into this moment. The next shot came before I could move. Then another. 2 more hit my chest. 1 punch through my gut. I screamed. Couldn't help it. The pain tore through me like wildfire. She moved in closer. 2 more to my legs. Left, then right. Then 1 in the shoulder. My body jerked with every impact. Still, I stayed conscious. I don't know how. Maybe it was adrenaline. Maybe it was disbelief. I just stared up at her. My wife. The woman I once built a life around. And I remember thinking, not about dying, but about the simple, brutal truth of it. I'd spent years building a company to protect people from harm, from threats, from danger, and I couldn't even protect myself from the one person I trusted the most. My voice cracked as I reached out, hands shaking, covered in blood. Please. That was all I could manage. 1 word. A plea. And then the last shot. I didn't see it. Just felt a blast of white heat across my head. A sharp, blinding pressure, then black. She must have thought she'd finished me. The bullet had grazed my temple, cut deep enough to lay my head open, knock me out cold, and leave a pool of blood big enough to fool anyone into thinking I was gone for good. I lay there motionless, barely breathing, fading in and out. Kinsley stood over me. I could feel her presence even if I couldn't open my eyes. Her breathing was fast, uneven, shallow, and then I heard it. The sound of metal hitting the ground. The gun. She wiped it down. My gun, the one I gave her, with her jacket sleeve. I could feel the cold settle around me, mixing with the warmth of my blood. And then I heard her footsteps. She turned and walked quickly back to the house. Inside the house, Kinsley moved with calculated precision. She peeled off her blood-stained clothes, her hands trembling only slightly as she shoved them into a black garbage bag. Every motion was rehearsed, practiced in her mind over the last several weeks. She tied the bag tightly. This was something she'd dispose of later, miles away from home, where no one would think to look. She scrubbed her hands next, furiously and methodically, scouring away any trace of gunpowder residue. Hot water, soap, a nail brush, every inch of skin inspected, every trace of what she'd done scrubbed away. By the time she was done, her fingers were red and raw. Then, she picked up her phone and dialed Tiago. "It's done," she said flatly when he answered. There was a pause on the line. "You mean you finally left him?" "I need you to meet me," she said, cutting him off. "I can't be alone right now." Tiago, oblivious to the truth behind her words, agreed without hesitation. They arranged to meet at a hotel downtown. But before she left the house, Kinsley made one more call. She dialed 911, her voice carefully measured to sound frightened but not hysterical. "I think I heard gunshots in the woods behind my house," she told the dispatcher, her words laced with trembling concern. "My husband went for a walk over an hour ago and hasn't come back. I'm worried something might have happened to him." The dispatcher would later describe her tone as convincingly distressed. As soon as she ended the call, Kinsley grabbed her keys, stepped out into the cool night air, and got into her car. With one last glance toward the dark line of trees behind their home, she started the engine and drove away, leaving Matthew bleeding and broken in the woods, believing he was already dead, or would be soon. Now back to Matthew. Inside the dark fog of my mind, time didn't move normally. Seconds felt like hours. I drifted in and out, the world slipping away, then clawing back in bursts of pain. Somewhere in the distance, too far to be real, I thought I heard the back door shut, her footsteps fading, a car starting. I tried to lift my head, but it felt like a boulder was crushing my skull. Blood seeped into my eye, warm and thick, and the copper taste in my mouth made it hard to swallow. I couldn't move my legs. My arm, maybe both, were useless. Every breath came like it was being pulled through broken glass. This is it, I thought. This is how I go out. Shot by the woman I loved. Left in the woods like an old dog. But somewhere between life and death, I heard another sound. Footsteps, different ones. Heavier, slower, cautious. Then a voice, low, steady, and full of something I hadn't heard in what felt like hours, concern. "Hang on, son," it said. "Help is coming." It was an old man's voice, trembling slightly, but sure. His hands were already on me, pressing down on my chest. I gasped, not because I could move, but because it hurt like hell. A good sign, I guessed. It meant I wasn't gone. Not yet. He kept talking to me as he worked. "You're going to be all right. Stay with me now. I've got you." I couldn't speak, but I heard him. And in that moment, I held on to that voice like a rope pulling me back from the edge. He later told me his name was Leonardo Morris. A retired doctor. Lived nearby. Said he'd been out on his porch when he heard the shots. And thank God he knew what he was hearing. Gunfire, not fireworks. A man who didn't shrug it off. A man who picked up his phone, called 911, then grabbed his old medical bag and followed the sound into the trees. Because without him, I'd be dead. By the time the paramedics arrived, I was barely hanging on. They told me later they were stunned I was still breathing. With the amount of blood I'd lost, the number of times I'd been hit, most people wouldn't have lasted 10 minutes, let alone the 40 it took to get me out of the woods. I heard shouting as they worked on me. The crunch of boots, gloves snapping, metal tools clinking. One of the EMTs leaned in close and said, "You're one lucky bastard." They started cutting away what was left of my shirt. Tubes went in. Pressure bandages slammed down over open wounds. I couldn't keep my eyes open, but I could feel the urgency, the race they were running against the clock. My body had been torn apart by 9 separate bullets. Soon, I arrived at Atlanta Memorial Hospital. They didn't know who I was when I came in. No wallet, no ID, just a shredded body and a prayer. They called me the miracle man who wouldn't die. It's strange what the mind holds on to when it's slipping away. I remember flashes, voices barking orders, bright lights, the sting of cold metal scissors cutting through fabric. But mostly, I remember pain. A pain so deep, it felt like it wasn't just in my body, it was my body. They didn't know I was Matthew Campbell. They didn't know the woman who called 911, reporting shots in the woods with trembling concern, was the same woman who pulled the trigger. My wife. While I was bleeding out on a stainless steel table, she was curled up in Tiago's arms in a hotel downtown, probably smiling, probably thinking she'd done it, that she was free, that she was a very rich widow. But I wasn't gone yet. The trauma team at Atlanta Memorial had seen gunshot victims before, but 9 entry wounds, catastrophic blood loss, shredded organs? That was a new one, even for them. He shouldn't have made it to us, one of the surgeons would later say. He shouldn't have had a pulse. For 12 hours, they fought for my life. They opened me up and dug through the destruction, pulled bullets from my chest, my stomach, my legs, stitched up what they could, cauterized what they couldn't, repaired organs, patched holes, stabilized fractures. 3 times my heart stopped. 3 times they brought me back. I don't remember those moments, but I know I came close, closer than anyone ever should. When they finally wheeled me into the ICU, I wasn't breathing on my own. A machine did that for me. Tubes ran in and out of my arms, my neck, my chest. Monitors beeped in chaotic rhythm, announcing every fragile beat of my heart. The doctors didn't offer false hope. They told the nurses, told the staff. If he wakes up, he'll probably never be the same. Brain damage, oxygen loss, trauma so severe it should have ended me. The next 48 hours would decide everything. And so I lay there, in that sterile, humming room, surrounded by machines keeping me alive. Police were already beginning to unravel the truth. At first, the 911 call from the concerned wife seemed legitimate. A woman claiming to have heard gunshots in the woods behind her house, worried for her husband who had gone for a walk and never returned. It was the kind of call that prompted immediate response, and it had. But when officers arrived at the Campbell home and found it completely empty, no lights on, no car in the driveway, no sign of the woman who had made the call, suspicions began to form. Then came the gun. Recovered at the scene where Matthew Campbell had been shot, it was a Sig Sauer P365, legally registered in Matthew's name, though known to have been purchased for his wife. What stood out immediately to investigators was its condition, wiped clean, not a single fingerprint. Odd, considering it had supposedly been dropped in panic or haste by an unknown assailant. For Detective Marcus Johnson, a 22-year veteran of Atlanta PD's homicide unit, it was a red flag. In cases like this, Johnson said later, when a spouse isn't where you expect them to be after something this tragic, it's usually one of 2 things. They're also a victim, or they know more than they're telling us. Kinsley Campbell wasn't at the hospital. She wasn't answering her phone, and she wasn't at home. Johnson put out an APB for her within the hour and began digging. What he uncovered painted a vastly different picture from the glowing couple Dom Kinsley portrayed online. On Instagram, they were the perfect pair, #blessed, #couplegoals. But the financial records told another story. Large, unexplained withdrawals from their joint account over the last several months, credit card debt spiraling out of control, and constant communication, hundreds of calls and texts, with a man named Tiago Sanchez. Sanchez, a nightclub owner with a flashy lifestyle and a reputation for dating married women, quickly became a person of interest. But what tied everything together was the life insurance policy, $5 million, taken out by Matthew Campbell 5 years earlier, naming Kinsley as the sole beneficiary. Meanwhile, across town at the Gateway Hotel, Kinsley's carefully constructed plan was beginning to crumble. She had arrived calm, collected, convinced she had just stepped into her new life as a wealthy widow. Tiago, at first, had been supportive. He thought she had finally walked away from her marriage, that the drama was over. Then the news report came on. The television in the hotel room crackled as the anchor announced that an unidentified man, found with multiple gunshot wounds in the woods behind his South Atlanta home, had survived and was in critical condition at Atlanta Memorial Hospital. The address confirmed it. This was the Campbell residence. Tiago turned sharply toward her, the blood draining from his face. "What did you do, Kinsley?" She didn't flinch. Her voice was soft, steady. "I made us free," she said. There was a strange calm in her eyes. It chilled Tiago to his core. Tiago left the room to get ice. That's what he told her anyway. Kinsley barely looked up, still seated on the edge of the hotel bed, staring blankly at the television. But he never came back. Instead, Tiago took the elevator down to the lobby, stepped outside, and pulled out his phone, not to call her, but his lawyer. Then the police. Whatever thrill he had once felt in their affair was long gone, replaced by fear. Watching her stare at the news, so calm, so detached, had unnerved him. He had no idea she was capable of that, and he didn't want to be next. By the time officers arrived at the Gateway Hotel, room 618 was empty. Kinsley was gone. She had realized what happened the moment too much time passed. When Tiago didn't return with ice, or with anything, panic didn't hit her immediately. She was too focused for that. She'd planned too carefully. She still had cash, plenty of it, and a burner phone. She slipped out of the hotel using the side exit, then disappeared into the city. For the next 3 days, Kinsley stayed one step ahead of the manhunt. She avoided large chains, using only cash to pay for everything. She dyed her hair at a drugstore bathroom, tossed her phone in a storm drain, and checked into a roadside motel an hour outside of Atlanta, using a fake name and a hoodie pulled low over her face. But the world was closing in. Her face was on every news broadcast. Every channel described her as a person of interest in what was now being called an attempted murder. Detectives had pieced together the timeline. Neighbors had come forward. The gun was tied to Matthew. The 911 call was being scrutinized. On the morning of the 4th day, Kinsley was checking out of a small motel in Monroe when the desk clerk glanced at the television behind the counter and recognized her. He smiled politely, offered her a receipt, and as soon as she stepped outside, he picked up the phone and called the police. She was arrested in the parking lot without incident. Calm, silent, still believing she had one card left to play. Her husband was dead. And without him, there'd be no witness, no direct testimony. It would all come down to speculation. What Kinsley didn't know, what no one had told her yet, was that back in Atlanta, defying every medical expectation, Matthew Campbell had opened his eyes. The world I woke up to was pain. Raw, suffocating pain and confusion so thick it felt like I was drowning in it. Voices came in waves. Beeping monitors. Cold lights. Questions I couldn't answer. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know why my chest burned or why I couldn't move my arm. My memories, the ones I needed, were gone, just black. The doctors told me I'd been shot 9 times, that I'd flatlined 3 times on the table, that it was a miracle I was alive. A miracle. Funny word for what it felt like. At first, everything was a blur. The hours before the shooting? Gone. Names slipped through my mind like water through fingers. The face I should have never forgotten, hers, was fogged, blurry, unreal. But then, slowly, pieces started to return. The woods. The cold wind on my face. The sound of leaves underfoot. Her voice. "Let's go to our spot." And then his name. Tiago. It came back in flashes at first. The photos. Her hand going to her jacket. The gun. My gun. The one I bought her. And her eyes. God, her eyes. Not angry. Not scared. Just cold. Detached. Like I was a stranger. Like I was nothing. The woman I'd shared my life with for 14 years didn't hesitate. She pointed the gun, and she pulled the trigger. The doctors called my recovery remarkable. I should have had brain damage, they said. Permanent speech loss, they said. But somehow I beat the odds. My right arm was still slow, and my voice had a slur that hadn't been there before, but I was alive. Coherent. Remembering. When Detective Johnson came to take my statement, I sat upright in the hospital bed, still aching in places I didn't know could ache, and told him what happened. She planned it. I said, my voice gravelly but steady. She wanted me dead. For the insurance money. For him. It was all they needed to lock her in. The photos. The bank records. The call logs. And now, my testimony. She was charged with attempted murder. But then came talk of a plea deal. 15 years, maybe less, with good behavior. That's what her lawyer was pushing for. I was lying in a hospital bed with metal plates in my ribs, wires in my chest, and a machine breathing for me for 2 weeks. And she might walk free before she's 50? She'll still be young enough to enjoy my money when she gets out. I told Liam Washington when he came to visit. Where's the justice in that? Liam just shook his head, jaw tight, hands in his jacket pockets. He knew what I was thinking, even before I said it. Because something inside me was changing. The man I'd been, The one who believed in rules, in protecting people, in trusting the system to do what was right. He wasn't here anymore. In his place was someone harder, someone darker, someone consumed by thoughts of proper retribution. Lying in that hospital bed, day after day, unable to move much, I had nothing but time. Time to think. Time to remember. Time to plan. They said I was lucky to be alive. The trauma team, the nurses, even the detectives. But luck wasn't enough. Not for this. Kinsley had tried to murder me. She'd stood over me, pulled the trigger, and left me in the dirt to die. And now? Now they were talking about plea deals. For months after the shooting, I walked out of Atlanta Memorial a different man. Thinner. Slower. The limp would probably be permanent, and the scars. Well, those were just part of me now. But what had changed the most couldn't be seen. The man who built a business on protection and principles? He was gone. I didn't go home. Couldn't. That place was poisoned now. I didn't go back to the office, either. Instead, I checked into a small one-bedroom apartment under a name that meant nothing to anyone, not even my employees. Paid in cash. No trail. Then I reached out to my core team. Veterans. Brothers. Men I'd trained and bled with. The kind of men who understood loyalty and silence. I need to disappear for a while. I told Liam Washington when he came to see me. He frowned. You sure about this? As far as anyone outside this room knows, I said. I'm still recovering in a private facility. You're in charge until I say otherwise. Can you handle the company? Liam nodded, but not without hesitation. What are you planning, Matt? I didn't answer directly. I just said, justice. Because what the court was offering, that wasn't justice. While Kinsley sat in jail, waiting for her trial, I got to work. The skills that built Campbell Security Solutions didn't disappear when I was shot. Surveillance, tracking, information control. I still had access to it all. I contacted former law enforcement buddies, private investigators, digital analysts, people who didn't ask too many questions. I used burner phones, set up secure channels, and I started digging. What I found made my blood run cold. The affair with Tiago? That was just the start. There were offshore accounts in her name, accounts I'd never seen, never authorized. She'd been siphoning money for years. I found encrypted conversations between her and a dealer in Eastern Europe, asking about untraceable poisons. That was before she settled on using my own gun against me. And the kicker? She had researched countries with no extradition treaties. She was planning her escape before I was even cold in the ground. Ready to vanish with the payout, free and clear. She had planned everything. The more I uncovered, the more certain I became. The courts weren't equipped for this kind of betrayal. The law would never make her pay what she truly owed. They said I survived for a reason. Maybe this was it. Back in the legal system, her case moved forward. Tiago Sanchez, cornered and scared, flipped. Turned state's evidence in exchange for immunity. Claimed he never knew about the murder plot, but admitted Kinsley had talked often, too often, about how free they'd be if I were gone. It was damning. Still, her attorney pushed hard. Negotiated. Spun it as a crime of passion. A mistake. No prior record. Stress. Mental strain. The usual defense playbook. In the end, they offered her a deal, 20 years. Eligible for parole in 12. No trial. No testimony. No spectacle. Just a guilty plea that would spare the expense of a trial. When I found out about the deal, 20 years, parole eligible in 12, I felt something inside me snap. 12 years. 12 years for 9 bullets. For the lies. The offshore accounts. The plan to vanish. For standing over me and finishing the job like I was nothing more than an inconvenience. That wasn't justice. She took everything from me. I told Liam one night, our voices low, the blinds drawn. My trust. My future. Nearly my life. Matt, he said, rubbing the back of his neck like he always did when he didn't want to say what he was thinking. You've got your life back. You beat the odds. The company's still strong. We can rebuild. I shook my head. I don't wake up thinking about business, Liam. I wake up gasping for air like I'm still in those woods. I see her eyes. That face. That calm. Like I was already dead. 12 years for that. You think that's enough? He didn't answer. Because we both knew it wasn't. 2 weeks before her sentencing, I paid her a visit. The name on the visitor log was mine. Matthew Campbell. No pretense. No disguise beyond the scar she gave me and the limp that never fully went away. When the guards glanced at me, they saw what they expected to see. An injured man, walking stiffly, left side lagging like someone still clawing his way back from trauma. I didn't need a fake name. I didn't need to hide. I was the victim after all. The man who lived. Who survived. No one stopped me. The visitation room at Fulton County Jail is all glass and phones. No contact. Cameras above, guards pacing the halls. It was built for control, surveillance. But none of that mattered. I wasn't here to touch her. I wasn't even here to argue. I was here so she could see me. Really see me. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. Jill had stripped her down to the bones. No foundation, no filters, no soft lighting. Just the real Kinsley. Pale, hard, hollow-eyed. She glanced at me, glanced away, then looked again. It took a few seconds. The gauntness, the changed posture, the jagged scar that ran like a question mark across my temple. I watched the moment it clicked in her eyes. Then I smiled, and I watched the blood drain from her face. Not because I was alive. She already knew that. It was the smile that did it. Because it wasn't the smile of the man she married. It wasn't the soft, dependable, forgiving smile of the husband she shot 9 times and left bleeding in the woods. It was the smile of someone who had come back from the dead. The smile of a man who had nothing left to lose. "Hello, Kinsley," I said into the phone. The receiver felt cold against my ear, my voice still slightly slurred. Just another piece of me she broke that night. She stared, blinking once, slow and sharp. I watched her eyes change, first recognition, then ice. That layer of frost she always wore when she felt the world closing in. "What do you want?" she asked. Her voice was hard, but not steady. "Come to gloat before they lock me up?" I leaned in slightly, just enough for her to see every inch of the damage. Every scar she put there. "I came to deliver a message," I said. "Yeah," she asked. "What kind of message?" 12 years, I said slowly. "Doesn't feel like balance. Not for what you did." Her hand twitched, just slightly. Her eyes darted toward the guard, calculating, wondering if she should press the button. Make a scene. Pretend she was afraid. "Is that a threat?" she said, trying to sound bored. I smiled again. Calm. Patient. The kind of smile you wear when your soul's already scorched and there's nothing left to burn. "No," I said. "Just a fact. You played God with my life. I'm just letting you know. Sometimes the scales balance themselves." I let that sit. She didn't speak. Couldn't, maybe. I stood up slowly, my limp pronounced. My movements deliberate. "Take care of yourself in there, Kinsley," I said. "You never know what tomorrow holds." Then I hung up the phone and walked away. No raised voices. No explicit threats. Just a quiet conversation between two people tied together by blood, betrayal, and a night in the woods neither of us would ever forget. I nodded to the guards on the way out. None of them stopped me. None of them questioned why Matthew Campbell had come to see the woman who tried to kill him. By the time anyone reviewed the footage, if they ever bothered, it would already be too late. 3 days after Matthew's visit, Kinsley Campbell was found dead in her cell at Fulton County Jail. The official cause of death, acute anaphylaxis. Kinsley had a well-documented peanut allergy, something she had declared during intake, and something the jail staff was trained to accommodate. Her meals were flagged, her trays marked. The system had protocols. But somehow, on that night, peanut oil ended up in her food. According to her cellmate, it started almost immediately. Kinsley took a few bites of her dinner, then froze. She clutched her throat, eyes wide, gasping for breath. Panic erupted in the cell. By the time guards responded to her cellmate's frantic cries, Kinsley was unconscious. Efforts to revive her failed. She was pronounced dead within the hour. An investigation was launched before her body was even removed. How could a fatal allergen have found its way into the food of a high-profile inmate with a known, life-threatening allergy? The jail's kitchen was the first focus. The meals had been prepared in accordance with dietary instructions. Yet somehow, contamination had occurred. When investigators reviewed the footage, they found something odd. A new kitchen worker had joined the staff just a week prior. His background check had come back clean. No criminal record, no red flags. But he had only worked 3 shifts, then vanished. He hadn't collected his last paycheck. No notice. No trace. More troubling still, the man seen on security footage bore only a passing resemblance to the ID photo on file. Similar height and build, but subtle differences in facial structure. And always wearing a cap. His face turned from the camera when possible. The staff hadn't questioned it at the time. Short-staffed and overworked, they were just glad for the extra help. A hitman from Europe. It started with the same thread Kinsley had tugged on. I remembered the vendor, buried in her browser history under layers she thought were secure. She'd used Tor browser, cryptocurrency wallets. Thought she was being clever. But I'd built a career on tearing through those defenses like tissue paper. The messages were still there. Oblique references. Solutions for difficult situations. Quiet exits. No trace, no trail. She'd been trying to buy poison, something untraceable, something final. The vendor never sold to her. She never made the deposit. Probably got cold feet. But the door had cracked open just enough for me to wedge it wider. I followed the usernames. Cross-referenced handles across other dark forums. Checked PGP keys, mirrored timestamps, wallet addresses. Most of it was garbage, bravado from kids in basements who wouldn't know cyanide from sugar. But eventually, I found something different. Professional. Clinical. No bravado, no flair. Just results. A username. Velas13. No ads. No flashy portfolio. Just an encrypted contact and a simple line beneath it. Discretion is currency. Silence is policy. I didn't reach out immediately. First I watched. Logged in under ghost accounts. Followed the trails. Jobs posted. Jobs completed. Each wrapped in code and cryptocurrency. But if you knew how to read the patterns, the footprints were there. A local politician in Prague. An accident in Marseille. A missing banker from Warsaw. Last seen boarding a train he never arrived on. I verified what I needed. Then I reached out. The message was simple. I'm not interested in violence. I'm interested in closure. Target is in U.S. custody. Peanut allergy. Make it look like negligence. No trace. One shot. One time. It was the kind of job that appealed to the right kind of operator. Precise, subtle, no cleanup. The response came 12 hours later. A PGP key. A price. High, but not outrageous. And instructions. I sent them everything they needed, schedules, allergy documentation, jail rotation logs. It felt cold. Clinical. Like submitting a requisition order for office supplies. But that's what it had to be. No emotion. Just strategy. They embedded a man into the kitchen rotation. Quiet. Dull. Forgettable. Worked 3 shifts. Never collected his check. Never came back. By the time they connected the dots, it was too late. Kinsley was already in the ground. There were other red flags that investigators found. The visitor log from the jail showed a name that raised immediate questions. Matthew Campbell. The victim himself had visited Kinsley, his tormentor, just days before her death. It was unusual, highly so, for a man nearly killed by someone to voluntarily visit her in jail. It wasn't against the law, but it wasn't common. And in this case, it couldn't be ignored. Security footage of the visit was clean. A baseball cap shadowed most of Matthew's face, and the lighting in the room was poor. But facial recognition experts confirmed it was Matthew. But detectives didn't need high-tech tools to follow a logical thread. Matthew Campbell had the clearest motive of anyone on record. His wife had pumped 9 bullets into him, left him for dead, then nearly walked away with $5 million. And now she was dead, just days after a face-to-face meeting with him in jail. The timing was impossible to ignore. They tracked Matthew down at a physical therapy retreat 2 hours outside Atlanta. When officers arrived, he didn't run. He didn't flinch. He welcomed them in. When they asked about his jail visit, Matthew didn't deny it. In fact, he explained it plainly. I just wanted her to see that I survived, that I'm still standing. That karma has its way of working. No raised voice. No emotion. Just fact. The detectives couldn't prove any intent. Not with what he'd said. Not with what the footage showed. And when they tried to pin down where he was the day Kinsley died, the answers only weakened their case further. According to both his live-in nurse and his physical therapist, Matthew had been in Jacksonville, Florida, at a rehabilitation facility on the day Kinsley died. The therapist swore under oath that he had conducted a gait training session with Matthew that morning. The nurse produced sign charts, dosage logs, and care reports, all time-stamped and consistent with Matthew's location. There were even surveillance camera feeds and swipe card access logs showing Matthew moving slowly through the building, unmistakable in his posture and limp. The speech, the scarring, the walk. You don't forget a man like that, one staff member told detectives. The police had suspicion, but no proof. Matthew Campbell's alibi was airtight. And without hard evidence, the investigation into Kinsley's death, an acute allergic reaction triggered by tainted food, remained officially closed. An accident. No one would ever be charged. And Matthew? He went on rebuilding his life. Detective Johnson didn't buy it. I could see it in his eyes during our brief meeting. He didn't say much, but I didn't need him to. I knew men like him. He was the kind who didn't believe in coincidences. It's too convenient, he told his partner, just loud enough for me to hear through the door one day. Then, more quietly, but not quiet enough. I know he did it, but we can't prove it. He was right. It was convenient. But convenience isn't a crime. Without evidence, without a real name, a real face, a real connection to the food that killed her, there was nothing they could do. The case stalled. Her death was ruled an accident, blamed on negligence in the jail's kitchen. A few low-level staffers lost their jobs. New protocols were drafted. New supervisors were hired. The file was closed. Only 2 people knew the truth. One was dead. The other would never speak of it. 6 months after Kinsley's death, I came home. The press called my recovery miraculous. I walked with a limp. My speech carried a soft slur. The damage she did would never fully fade, but I had survived. And survival, it turned out, was good business. Campbell Security Solutions thrived. Clients loved the myth of it, the man who wouldn't die. They saw a man who had stared death in the face and come out stronger. It made them trust me more. Only Liam Washington ever looked deeper. He never said it outright, but I knew he suspected. I'd catch him watching me sometimes, after long nights, when the office was empty and the bottle had run low. He'd glance at the shelf where the photo sat. Not a wedding picture. Not her laughing on some fake vacation. No filters. Just the Fulton County mugshot. Every now and then, I'd stare at it too. Not out of love. Not hate, either. Just clarity. Then one night, Liam said it. Was it worth it? His words came slow, quiet, tangled in the haze of too many whiskeys and too many truths left unspoken. He didn't look at me when he said it, just stared out the office window, Atlanta's lights flickering like distant warning beacons. I didn't answer. He finally turned, eyes glassy, but sharp. Too sharp. I've seen you checking those crypto wallets, Matt. Late at night. Think I wouldn't notice? Same exchange Kinsley tried to use. He tapped his temple. She was sloppy. You never are. My jaw tightened, but still I said nothing. You planned it. He continued, quieter now. All of it. Rehab, the visit, the alibi. Hell, you probably funded it through 5 layers of coin I couldn't trace if I tried. I met his gaze then. Not to deny it. Not to confirm it. Just met it. Liam sighed and reached for the bottle. You're not the man I used to know, he muttered. No. I said finally, my voice low and even. I'm not. He nodded, slowly, and poured himself another drink. We didn't speak for a while after that. The air was heavy, not with guilt or grief, just understanding. I didn't look at him. Didn't blink. Didn't pretend to misunderstand the question. I looked at Liam, my oldest friend, the only one who could ask me that question and expect an honest answer. My eyes gave him nothing. No rage. No pride. No regret. Would you believe me? I asked. If I said I take no pleasure in what happened to her? He didn't answer right away. He just studied me, the same way he used to study blueprints back when we were both trying to build something out of nothing. I'm not sure, he said finally. I nodded. That was fair. Maybe even the right answer. 9 bullets, Liam. I looked away from him then, out toward the windows and the flickering lights of Atlanta. She stood over me and pulled the trigger 9 times. The law wanted to give her 12 years. I never got to vote on that. We sat in silence after that. Just 2 men and too much whiskey between them. The truth didn't need to be spoken. It lived in the quiet spaces. I heard a story once, I said after a while, swirling the amber in my glass. Fox gets caught in a farmer's trap. Chews off its own leg to get free. Survives, but it's never the same fox again. And the farmer? Liam asked, his voice careful. Died of a snake bite. I chuckled. I let the corner of my mouth lift, just barely. I doubt she's fixing her lashes in heaven. He didn't respond. Just kept watching me, as if trying to find something buried under the years and the scars and the silence. You sleep okay these days? He asked finally. Better than I should. I told him, still looking out at the skyline. Though some might say, that's punishment enough. A year later, I returned to the clearing. The woods had swallowed it whole. Vines, fallen branches, soft leaves. No sign of the blood, or the screams, or the fire in her eyes. Just quiet. Someone had left a cross there. Unmarked. Weathered. At the edge of the stream where the light used to fall between the trees. Maybe it was for her. Maybe it was for me. Maybe it was for what died between us that night. I left it alone. Some mornings don't need names. I turned and walked away, the weight of memory pressing down with every step. Not in my legs. Not in the shoulder she tore open. Not in the slur that still clung to my voice. In my soul. A 10th bullet. One no surgeon could ever remove, lodged deep in whatever remained of it. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.